This is Derrick Broze. This is Derrick Broze of the Conscious Resistance. I'm here in Standing Rock.
That man is wanted in 5 different countries: Chile, Argentina, Brazil.
We've been fighting a long time. We have all lost so very much. So many loved ones gone.
Don't you fucking tease that horse!
You are not alone. There are pockets of resistance all around the planet. We are at the brink. Above all, stay alive. You have no idea how important you are. If you're listening to this, you are the resistance.
Hey everyone, this is Derrick Broze with the Conscious Resistance Network, and tonight we are going to be talking about DOGE, Elon Musk, and how talk of efficiency may very well be a gateway to technocracy. We're also going to be talking about the latest on this Yemen-Israeli proxy war and how so many people are falling for the trap of cheering on war, death, and violence for any number of excuses that might be put before them. You know, this is just how things go. They tell you there's going to be peace, and when inevitably there is not peace, the sycophants, in this case of Donald Trump, and previously of Biden or Obama or any other politician, will make excuses for why these things are happening. And then the third story we're going to cover is about the UK free speech laws. Now, some of you out there know that the UK's free speech laws have gotten pretty bad, whatever's left of them. But there's also been some claims I've been seeing floating around social media saying that even Americans or other foreigners could be under threat for the things they post online if they visit the UK, which I decided to look into and see if we can debunk or prove that. And then the final story or thing we're going to talk about at the end of today's show is just an exploration of how I see collectivism on the rise again. And we're going to define what I mean by that. We'll talk about how people are identifying with themselves as the government. I always hate this thing. Like, I'll just give you a little preview of what I'm going to get into. Like, you ever hear somebody say, like, for example, the United States bombed Yemen, and they'll say, we bombed Yemen, or the opposite. You know, let's say the terrorist bombed us on 9/11, and people will say, don't you know they attacked us? And they identify with this sort of fictional thing called a nation state or with the government. And it's very problematic. We're going to talk about that. And then how that ties into the fact that I believe a true evolution on the mass scale, which is already happening on small scale and with people around the world, but on a mass scale where we see the masses of people finally questioning things, it won't happen, I believe, until we have more emotional maturity, emotional intelligence, spiritual maturity, spiritual intelligence. And unfortunately, that's just not where we're at as human species. I'm not even saying I'm there. I'm looking down as though I'm so fully evolved and look at these silly humans who haven't got to where I am. No, I'm saying collectively, because yes, we are a collective species, but we are made up of individuals. We have to do that deeper work, that healing work, that trauma work in order to get to a place where we recognize we don't need mommy and daddy figures in government taking care of us. And it's kind of crazy to me to say this because, you know, I just turned 40 about a month and a half ago, and I still feel very young. And I guess I look it, and I feel like I'm still learning every day, but I meet certain people who are older than me and they still haven't quite grasped this concept. Like, they're still, I don't know, from my perspective, talking like they're a 10-year-old or something, or at least, like, let's say they're, you know, maybe they're in a suit, they look like an adult, they have all the appearances of an adult, they have a house, they have a car, all these kind of things, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually, psychologically, they're like children, and it's very sad to see. So we're going to be covering all that and more tonight on the Conscious Resistance Live. This is the 152nd of the Conscious Resistance Live that I've been doing since 2013, off and on. It's taken me a decade to get to 150 episodes, but nevertheless, I'm excited to be here with you guys. I want to go ahead and start and remind you guys to visit my website, theconsciousresistance.com. Let me go ahead and open that up real quick. theconsciousresistance.com. This is the best place to find all of my content right here, theconsciousresistance.com. Shout out to everybody who listens on Spotify and all the podcasting platforms. I see you guys, I hear you, and I see the numbers growing over there. I'm thankful to everybody who does. Please do recommend, subscribe, follow, share, all those things, no matter where you watch. And I just want to share, this past week, we put up a couple of new pieces of important information related to the truth about the world, like an article called How Big Tech Plans to Read Your Mind. We also posted 2 of my recent presentations. You guys know I said last week I just got back from being on the road, Costa Rica and LA. And so I posted my talk from the Conscious Life Expo called Exiting the Matrix and Building a Better Model. I also posted a virtual presentation I gave for the Intentional Community Summit called 5 Tips for Building or Joining an Eco-Village. For anybody out there who is in that arena or looking to join that arena, I highly, highly, highly recommend you guys check out this presentation. I am not an expert, but I have been doing this for the last 5 years, working on it for 8 years in a bigger, broader picture. And yeah, and I think I've got some info that you might want to know about. So other thing I will mention is this last week we dropped our brand new mini documentary, which I didn't tell anybody we were doing. We were kind of quietly working on behind the scenes while we were working on the final episode of the Pyramid of Power. But I took some of my most recent articles about Peter Thiel, the Peter Thiel acolytes, and that whole network, and turned it into a mini documentary, which comes out to 16 minutes long. And I would love to know how many of you guys out there in the internet land have watched it. It is on all the platforms. So if you're watching it anywhere right now, if you're watching this show on Twitter, Facebook, Odyssey, Rockfin, BitChute, Substack, any of the other platforms I'm on, then you can see this video here. But of course, the best place is always at theconsciousresistance.com. It's called Donald Trump, Peter Thiel, and the Technocrats. Everything I put in here, all the links, all the resources are in my script, in my transcript. There's an audio version. There's the video. I'm really grateful to have worked with my previous editor, Becca Godwin, who is an amazing, talented woman who helped me with the first 13 episodes of the Pyramid of Power. And we're going to continue to collaborate in some different ways. So check that out if you haven't, guys, because I've been getting lots of positive responses. It's got more than 50,000 views on different platforms, probably over 100,000 collectively, but I would love to see it go more and more and just keep reaching people at this really crucial time. Now, the other thing I want to mention is that we did launch the crowdfunding campaign for the Pyramid of Power. I am finishing the final episode of this series. I'm not going to rehash what I've already put out there. Again, if you're following me on my channels, you've probably already seen me put out a video talking about the Pyramid of Power and how we're currently working on episode 17. Every single episode of this series has been completely crowdfunded. So I've released 16 episodes, more than, I think, 10 hours of content at this point. Yeah, definitely more than 10 hours of content at this point. And we're working on the final episode, which is probably going to be 45 minutes to an hour long, answering the question of who or what is at the top of the pyramid. And I'm interviewing everybody from James Corbett, G. Edward Griffin, Richard Grove, David Icke, Daniel Eshtelin, Larkin Rose, Peter Dale Scott, Adam Green. I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody, but probably I'm going to try to get Catherine Austin Fitts, maybe get Whitney Webb in there, and just asking all these very talented, very intelligent researchers their own opinions and their own views of who or what is at the top of the pyramid. And of course, I will be inserting my own thoughts and opinions on that. This entire thing, we've done 16 episodes, more than 10 hours of content on just over $30,000. And I haven't got paid a single dime for the last 5 years that I've been working on this, which is fine. I know I'll get paid in the future as this grows. But if you want to support our efforts, the link is, let me go ahead and drop that link for you guys. We're doing a fundraiser campaign on Fundraiser. So wherever you're watching, I'll drop that link in there. It's also in the show notes wherever you're watching. If you have any amount you can give, it's all appreciated. Very cool to see, though. We just launched it last Monday, so 1 week ago, and we're already at 43% of our goal of 10,000. We've raised $44,267 minus fees from 75 people. We've got 13 days left. We also raised an additional $1,000 that somebody donated in Bitcoin. And then also I want to mention this for those of you who are in the Monero world, and I hope you are. If you want to learn more about Monero, dive into it, learn more about private cryptos like Monero. It's pretty much the only one I really trust. We also have a crowdfunding campaign involving Monero where we had 6 donators there raising over 1 Monero, which is a couple $100, and I'm really grateful for that. So I'll drop that link if you guys want to support via Monero. Very grateful. Seriously, truly, truly. In fact, let me go back to the other one real quick. I want to read a comment that we got on the crowdfunding campaign, because these are just, I mean, it's a very humbling experience to see so many kind words from all you guys. But let me just read one of them. There's been, as I said, 75 people donating, and they've all shared so many kind things. But I'll just share this one today. This guy, some guy or a woman, I don't know, 7 hours ago says, "First saw you on Redacted just before the 2024 election. I admit getting caught up in the right versus left matrix for the last couple of years, leaning more towards the right-wing camp. Even though I've never felt like I belonged in the Christian right camp, with all the absurdity going on with the left, it was predictable that so many of us would get directed towards the Republican Crawl, maybe he meant cabal, just where the government wants us. I've fallen for the same for some of their propaganda along the way. There's so much stuff I wasn't aware of until your research, and it puts a lot of things into full perspective, such as the Peter Thiel connections. Always knew deep down Trump was never really our friend per se, but being blinded by the good old days of 2019, it was you who really helped me break out of that mindset and reflect on these past couple years. Even a few months later, I'm still going through this process. Regrettably, I did vote for him mostly because of the vaccine mandates. When Trump won, I wasn't really excited. It was just a really weird feeling I've never felt before. It really did feel fake in that moment. That's when it started to click. Thanks to your circle, I was introduced to so many other great researchers such as James Corbett, David Icke, and especially Adam Green, who definitely speaks to me on a personal level. Instead of listening to Timcast and the liberal hive mind, I should have been tuning into these guys. I've never donated before, but your series was so good and something I really care about, so it's the least I can do. Going forward, I'm going to try and contribute more to this movement. Wishing you the best of luck. Know that your work is paying off and is reaching people. And those comments really do mean a lot. And this person donated $50 anonymously. Thank you, anonymous person, and all the other people who've been making just donations from $500 to $5 and all the kind comments. It's truly appreciated. So thank you guys for that. And again, thanks to everybody who has been supporting over there on Kuno. One last thing, and we're going to dive into our story. I don't do super chats. I am over on YouTube right now, but I don't do super chats because I don't want to work with YouTube and take Google money. But I do XMR chats. So I'm posting a link in the chat there, wherever you're watching, but also what you're seeing on the screen is xmrchat.com/Derrick Broze. Simple enough, xmrchat.com/Derrick Broze. And for those of you who do use Monero, you can give me super chats. You can give me super, like tips on the show, during the show. And if you're able to do that, I will go ahead and I will share that with the audience as we're live. So I will be checking that throughout the show. Just another way you can support me. But ultimately right now, guys, if you have anything to give and you want to support my efforts, please give it to the crowdfunding campaign for the Pyramid of Power. That's where I need it the most right now. So y'all, thank you for all that support. All right, I'm going to play a very quick clip. I'm going to play it and come back because I got to go blow my nose. I'm having something going on here. So excuse me. I'll be right back. And we're going to dive into our first story about DOGE and the efficiency movement and how it's a gateway to technocracy. Stay tuned.
Well, Senator, let me follow up by asking, do you think that the CIA and military intelligence agencies and the FBI have used the emergency provisions, both in law and by emergency agency, the Federal Preparedness Agency it's called now, to have contingency plans which threaten the liberty of American citizens?
Mr. Rowan, in due course, the committee will pass judgment on those questions. I'm not going to pre-guess the committee or prematurely attempt to pass judgment on this program. But let me tell you this. In the need to develop a capacity to know what potential enemies are doing, the United States government has perfected a technological capability that enables us to monitor the messages that go through the air. These messages are between ships at sea. They could be between units, military units in the field. We have a very extensive capability of intercepting messages wherever they may be in the airwaves. Now, that is necessary and important to the United States as we look abroad at enemies or potential enemies. We must know. At the same time, that capability at any time could be turned around on the American people. And no American would have any privacy left. Such is the capability to monitor everything, telephone conversations, telegrams, it doesn't matter. There would be no place to hide. If this government ever became a tyranny, if a dictator ever took charge in this country, the technological capacity that the intelligence community has given the government could enable it to impose total tyranny. And there would be no way to fight back, because the most careful effort to combine together in resistance to the government, no matter how privately it was done, is within the reach of the government to know. Such is the capability of this technology. Now, why is this investigation important? I'll tell you why. because I don't want to see this country ever go across the bridge. I know the capacity that is there to make tyranny total in America. And we must see to it that this agency and all agencies that possess this technology operate within the law and under proper supervision so that we never cross over that abyss. That's the abyss from which there is no return.
All right. So that was Frank Church of the Church Committee. Like I said, playing a quick clip while I blow my nose. Thank you guys for that. Let's go ahead and dive into this first story. Is Elon Musk's DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, really about bringing in technocracy? Now, I'm going to define technocracy really briefly. I know those of you who follow me a long time, you understand it. Those of you who've read my book, How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State, you understand it. But for those of you who are maybe new here, I've noticed there's quite a bit of people who are confused and think that when I say technocracy, I'm anti-technology. But that's not true at all. In fact, I'm not anti-technology at all. It's a tool, and technology and technocracy are not the same thing, although they sound similar and the words are spelled nearly the same. Technocracy is a political philosophy, an ideology that says that rather than there being a business class, corporations, etc., or a political class and having voting and democracy, and for all the flaws we know of that, they want to get rid of that whole thing and say, no, instead what we should have is have the technologists, the experts, the scientific experts, the technological elite at the top who will manage the machines, in the original words of the 1930s technocrats. I think today we would call that artificial intelligence, to micromanage society for the good of all people. And they promise it's going to be a utopia. They talked about energy credits. Of course, this would also involve the loss of individual choice and liberty and things like that. But at the end of the day, it's not freedom. And that's what technocracy is about, right? So when I say that, just understand I'm not just talking against technology broadly speaking. I'm specifically talking about a philosophy from the 1930s, which is still going and still influencing people, which was picked up in the 1970s by the deep state agent some of you may know, Zbigniew Brzezinski, who was a longtime advisor to presidents, working with everybody from Jimmy Carter to Obama. He also worked with David Rockefeller to help found the Trilateral Commission. The Trilateral Commission has been one of the biggest proponents of technocracy. And in 2023, you might have missed it, but the Trilateral Commission said 2023 was the first year of the New World Order. So all of that to say, when I'm talking about technocracy, I'm not just saying Elon Musk is a billionaire, therefore he's bad, or Elon Musk, I don't like Twitter, so he's bad, or anything like that. I'm speaking about a very specific mindset, which Elon Musk, as a billionaire involved in the tech sector, who clearly thinks that he is above and beyond governments, and now is literally in the White House as some sort of unofficial advisor, where the courts still haven't even determined what exactly his role is, and legally speaking, where it stands and what DOGE is exactly. There's a lot of unknowns, but this is a technocratic takeover of the US government. It doesn't mean it wasn't already happening prior to Trump. It's just that Trump needed to be the one to be in power so that it would roll along faster, because so much of the right wing and MAGA are now cheering on, and they just can't get Elon Musk. They can't get their nose out of Elon Musk's ass. Can't stop kissing his ass and long enough to realize that this guy is literally marching them into the technocratic state. So let's go ahead and check out this article. This is, of course, my latest article for The Last American Vagabond. It will be in the show notes at theconsciousresistance.com. But as always, you can find all of my articles, my weekly articles, at thelastamericanvagabond.com on my author page. So I wrote, to understand the roots of Elon Musk's DOGE, we must look back to the philosophies which preceded and inspired the original technocracy movement. I pretty much already gave you guys a very broad overview of technocracy. If you want to learn more, you can read the article. One important note that I think more people are realizing by now, I remember when I was writing this in my book in 2019, How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State, not too many people realized back in 2019 that Elon Musk's grandfather, Joshua Heidelman, was a research director for Technocracy Inc. in Canada, and also the national chairman of the Social Credit Party. And he actually did get in trouble, legally speaking, for his work involving technocracy. So that's just one little finer point. But as I already outlined, technocracy, we'll skip ahead a little bit. I also mentioned Zbigniew Brzezinski. But what people don't really understand is that the technocracy movement was actually preceded by something called the efficiency movement, which flourished during the same time period, what's known as the progressive era in the United States, essentially from the late 1800s, 1890 or so, to around 1930, which is around the time when the technocracy movement sort of took center stage and became more popular for, a few years or so. This efficiency movement said that its goal was to identify and eliminate waste in all areas of the economy and society, and to develop and implement best practices. In fact, from what I was reading, the efficiency movement kind of even like created that term best practices. Maybe this other guy named Taylor we're about to talk about, but between the efficiency movement and Taylorism, best practices, as well as other terms that are kind of common in management theory and philosophy, have stuck. So this is not just some random movement from 100 years ago that came and went and had no influence, as you're about to see. Proponents of this movement argued that inefficiencies could be identified and fixed by experts. Supporters of this movement included Andrew Carnegie, John D. Rockefeller, and John D. Rockefeller Jr. I found this book called Bureaus of Efficiency. I never even knew about this till I dove into this research. I always love learning new things, and it's cool whenever I have an idea for an article like, hey, I think I can make a connection between DOGE, the efficiency movement, and technocracy. But then as I got in there, I'm like, holy crap, this is even deeper than I realized. And so I'm glad I did go down this rabbit hole. The book Bureaus of Efficiency, Reforming Local Government in the Progressive Era, shows how attempts at government reform led to calls for the creation of a, quote, permanent administrative branch of government that would be divorced from politics. Now, doesn't that sound familiar to you guys? We might not think of DOGE as permanent yet because it's supposed to disappear in 2026, but somehow I have a feeling that might not be the case. But it said that the movement of efficiency, a movement called for a permanent administrative branch of government separate from politics. And that's kind of what DOGE is playing. Like I said, the court still can't define what exactly DOGE is. And when Elon and his team are sending letters to different politicians and offices, which I'm not standing by them and supporting them, I'm just saying this is a billionaire technocratic takeover. So the people are receiving letters saying, hey, email us back and justify your job, or you should leave, you're fired. And the people, the various employees of the government aren't even sure, like, is this legal? Am I supposed to listen to him? Technically, DOGE is like this, rebranding of a small kind of bureaucracy called the Digital Government Service, I think, really obscure office that most people didn't know about. That's what Trump's executive order turned into DOGE. So there's still a lot of people who don't even know what the heck this is. It is separate from the mainstream politics, from the mainstream government, but yet somehow the words that he's using and the orders he's barking out and his team are barking out are supposed to have weight. Under this model, politicians would continue to decide government policies, but a, quote, administrative cadre would implement the policies. This contributed to the rise of an academic discipline called public administration. The founders of this discipline sought to, quote, create at all levels of government a permanent, merit-based civil service system that would be beyond the reach of elected officials, that's what I'm describing right now, and would employ experts and technocrats to advise politicians of rational choices available to them. This is what this book about the efficiency movement is describing, or this book, and how that was these people's goal. Again, create a permanent merit-based civil service system beyond the reach of elected officials and employ experts and technocrats to advise politicians of, quote, rational choices available to them. In his 1998 biography of John D. Rockefeller Sr., author Ron Chernow wrote, "The progressives conjured up an antiseptic form of government in which decisions would be made rationally by scholars, scientists, and experts." And there does seem to be some connection between the Rockefellers and this movement. I couldn't find real hard connections. I did find a few things. Like, for example, after this movement started to get big, the public started to see the creation of nonprofit agencies, which were often labeled as municipal research bureaus. And in fact, in 1912, John D. Rockefeller Jr., I actually found an old newspaper article showing that he funded something called the New York City Bureau of Municipal Research, investigations into the New York City Police Department. They basically were saying, we're going to start putting out reports investigating how efficient all these different departments are. And at least one of those reports was funded by John D. Rockefeller Jr. But what most Americans don't know, and that I didn't know until I did this research, is that one branch of these so-called municipal research bureaus was known as bureaus of efficiency. That sounds familiar. The creation of these efficiency bureaus was a direct result of the growth of the efficiency movement itself. So this efficiency movement starts coming about. The Rockefellers and Carnegies and others start looking for more efficient ways to run their philanthropic outlets, to run their businesses. And in a lot of ways, like ultimately, this was just the bosses trying to figure out how to make more money. How can we like, as you're going to see in just a moment, some of these people were so obsessed with every movement the worker made. They were literally studying the way the workers moved and figured, okay, so they can be 5% more efficient if they turn left instead of turn right when they do this particular task. Things like that. Like this, it was down to the minutia of how to study human beings, mainly focused at the workplace. But also, as this idea grew and eventually got to technocracy, the idea was applied to society at large. So here's another one. 1916 to 1933, the U.S. government under Woodrow Wilson's administration operated the U.S. Bureau of Efficiency. Did you know that existed? That's 100 years ago. Elon's back now with the Department of Government Efficiency. Well, 100 years ago, there was apparently the U.S. Bureau of Efficiency. Chicago also created an efficiency division within the city government's Civil Service Commission, and private citizens organized the Chicago Bureau of Public Efficiency. Chicago efficiency proponents also championed this. This is kind of creepy. The study of personal efficiency, an attempt at measuring employees' performance through new so-called scientific merit systems. And that was what I was describing a moment ago. But all of this leads to a man named Frederick Winslow Taylor. He is, I think, the godfather of this whole sort of school of thought, particularly the philosophy called Taylorism, which is named after him, obviously. And this guy was reported to have a stopwatch that he carried with him everywhere to identify even the smallest inefficiencies where people were wasting time or time could have been saved and money could have been made. Always had a stopwatch with him, according to the biography about his life. He served as the president of the American Society of Mechanical Engineers, and he was elected to the American Philosophical Society. As I said, his brand of efficiency came to be known as Taylorism or scientific management. And interestingly enough, when you understand technocracy, you see that technocracy is about the scientific elite or the experts or the technological elite running things. And interesting to see that he called his school of thought scientific management. So now let's dive deeper into Taylorism. This is a quote from Frederick Winslow Taylor in his book, The Principles of Scientific Management. The work of every workman is fully planned out by the management at least one day in advance, and each man receives in most cases complete written instruction describing in detail the task which he is to accomplish, as well as the means to be used in doing the work. So literally thinking of like, you show up to work and they've already got your entire day planned out and complete written instructions describing in detail the task which you are to accomplish and how you're supposed to do it. Some people might say, well, that would make work more efficient, but this is ultimately coming down to them studying humans and understanding how to control and manipulate humans. That's what it really comes down to. In his book, The Principles of Scientific Management, it actually ended up becoming one of the most influential management books of the 20th century. And as I said, he was trying to show the United States show the reader how the U.S. was losing because of inefficiencies, and that the solution was systematic management based on defined laws, rules, and principles which are applied to all human activity. And while this philosophy was embraced by the likes of the Rockefellers and management professionals, like I'm sure if you know anybody who's in business administration, public administration, management theory, they would probably know the name Taylor or Taylorism. But this philosophy did actually have some critics at the time it was existing and even afterwards. And that's important that people recognize how this philosophy could be applied in a very dangerous way. Like many well-meaning intentioned utopian theories, they can go very wrong. And so this guy's like, look, if we just make everything hyper efficient, the world will run better and smoother. We can save money, time, energy. Everybody will be happier, etc. But what happens when this sort of ideology gets in the hands of psychopaths? Some of the opponents of Taylorism claimed that the philosophy reduced workers to simple automatons who were capable of only capable of mindlessly following instructions from the allegedly superior managerial expert class. One such critic was Mary Parker Follett, an American management theorist and philosopher known for her work on organizational theory and management. Follett's view on management differed from Taylor in that she emphasized the importance of interpersonal relationships, communication, and cooperation in the work environment. So she kind of took more of a holistic thing, saying like, hey, if people have better relationships and better communication and can cooperate, then the work environment might be better. What she said was that Taylor's system could be authoritarian and hierarchical, and that these would limit the workers' creativity. In her book, her 1918 book, she wrote The New State Group Organization, The Solution of Popular Government. She wrote, quote, the Taylor system is based on the idea that the worker is a machine and that the manager is the one who knows how to run the machine. And there was also a paper I found from 1970 from Professor Charles S. Meyer, published the paper Between Taylorism and Technocracy, European Ideologies and the Vision of Industrial Productivity in the 1920s. This paper argues that Taylorism and later technocracy, although they were viewed as a way to kind of improve efficiency and economic growth, that these ideologies have actually already been used and can be used to justify authoritarianism and suppression of the rights of workers, and I would argue the suppression of the rights of people in general. The professor outlined his ideas and said that these concepts can be used by regimes which call themselves communist, fascist, and even democratic. So not to be, assuming, only the bad guys will use that. Those of us in a quote unquote democratic country or a Republican country would never do this. Unfortunately, that's not true. Now, here's an example of this. This is real world example of how this guy, Frederick Winslow Taylor, and his philosophy of scientific management, or Taylorism, which influenced the efficiency movement, which influenced the technocracy movement, which Elon Musk's grandfather was a part of, and which I argue Elon Musk and the other tech billionaires are a part of, and in their own words are promoting. This philosophy was actually employed and celebrated by the Bolsheviks, by the Russians, the communists, the revolution in 1918. Within 6 months of the 1917 October Revolution, Vladimir Lenin openly acknowledged Taylorism as an inspiration and potential method for reinforcing the Soviet government. He actually wrote about this in an essay called The Immediate Tasks of the Soviet Government, and he specifically mentions Taylorism as a model which his newly formed Soviet government should model themselves after. He said, quote, "We must organize in Russia the study and the teaching of the Taylor system and systematically try it out and adapt it to our purposes." So, I thought that was really interesting. So the communists themselves, the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia, at the very beginning, they were already looking to the Americas and looking to this man, Frederick Taylor, and saying, his ideas could really be applied to our philosophy. It was more that they didn't necessarily agree with everything he said, but they thought, being more efficient, managing the worker, all this sort of stuff, we can apply this to our Soviets and to our twisted philosophy. And at the same time that Lenin was leading his Bolsheviks to victory and championing the cause of a socialist Taylorism, this philosophy was also influencing Germany in the pre-World War I and post-World War I, obviously on the way to Hitler's rise time period. And there's a book by Judith A. Merkel called Management and Ideology, The Legacy of the International Scientific Management Movement, where we learn how Taylorism actually influenced Germany before, during, and after World War I. This book tells this interesting story. So apparently Taylor, Frederick Winslow Taylor, he worked at a company called Bethlehem Steel, and he was working on a number of different projects, cutting steel mainly. But again, his whole theory was like, how can I make this faster? How can I make this more efficient? So Taylor begins working at Bethlehem Steel in 1898. But then by 1900, he's conducting experiments on steel with a man named Monsell White. And then later that year, at the Paris exhibition of 1900, which is a very famous event, it's one of these world fairs. If you guys remember from back in the early 20th century, there was quite a few of these, the Chicago World Fair, etc. This was the Paris Exposition of 1900. So Taylor and his partner from American company Bethlehem Steel and his ideas about efficiency, which were still just brewing in his mind. He hadn't written his book yet, but he was starting to study these things. He goes to the Paris Exposition, and guess who is there to see him? A number of German engineers. The German engineers are extremely excited and interested in his experiments. And from there, his ideas start to spread throughout German engineering and political spheres. It's kind of just like a curious twist of fate, how this guy who's coming from the efficiency movement, scientific management, and then happens to go to Paris for this world fair. German engineers happen to be there. They see him, they see his ideas on cutting steel, and from there they learn more about his philosophies, and those start to be incorporated into Germany going into World War I and afterwards. The Verein Deutscher Ingenieur, the VDI, this is a quote from her book, Merkel's book, which is called, again, Management and Ideology, The Legacy of the International Scientific Management Movement. The VDI maintained a central role in the introduction of scientific management reforms in Germany. It popularized Taylorism among the members of the engineer profession, founded organizations designed to promote efficiency in industry, and encouraged communication and exchange with the scientific movement in the United States. So there's like a direct connection. And as they said there, they start communicating with their sort of US counterparts. This is where the ideas of Taylorism, technocracy, and efficiency come into Germany and absolutely influence some of the leaders of Germany's, war front in World War I. And some could argue that that went on and continued to influence the Third Reich. Merkel also notes that the immediate effect of this technological exchange of knowledge between the US and Germany was that Taylor's works were translated into German for the industrial and technological audiences. So not only do they start talking about him, they translate all his books. And one of his books, Shop Management, was printed in numerous editions. And in 1913, only 3 years after his book was published in English, it was published in Germany with great interest. And the book also details how his ideas influenced the key engineers and economists within the German Empire, including Richard von Moellendorff, who would become, quote, one of the architects of Germany's wartime planning system and an advocate of a state-run economy using Taylor scientific management. And so she concludes here, thus, from the lesser figures in the history of corporatism, such as Goethe Briefs, to the great advocates of post-World War I Planwirtschaft, such as Walter Rathenau or Richard von Moellendorff, the example and teachings of scientific management can be shown to have been a real and a lively force that gave new strength to the old German doctrine. Now, I hope I'm making sense, guys. I hope this is all computing for you guys. What I'm trying to show you here is that this philosophy of technocracy, which we know the historic technocracy movement started in the United States and Canada in the 1930s, but that's not really where it began. Like all philosophies, they sort of build on top of each other. They build on people before them. It's a common thing, right? So there is a thread I think we can trace that goes from the technocracy movement and includes people like Elon Musk's grandfather. And then in the 1970s, Zbigniew Brzezinski writing about the Technotronic era and the Trilateral Commission, all the sort of groups we know about today that are pushing technocracy from the right and the left. But you go back before the technocracy movement in the 1930s, and you get the efficiency movement. You get bureaus of efficiency. You get a government department talking about efficiency from 1916 to 1930, 100 years ago. And then you go to what inspired some of those people, and it's a man named Frederick Winslow Taylor, whose ideas on scientific management of how to be as efficient as possible in the workplace, but also with human activity in general, specifically inspired the Bolshevik communists and Germany during wartime, during World War I. That is, to me, I was like, wow, there really is a thread there. Now, I've got criticism from this article from the Elon lovers who said, oh, come on, Derrick, you're trying to just guilt by association just because this thing, blah, blah, or just because they had some departments 100 years ago called bureaus of efficiency talking about how to micromanage human beings. That doesn't mean Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency is the same thing. And you're right, it isn't inherently the same thing. But let's look at Elon's behavior. That's where we're going to wrap up this story here. Let's look at what he's actually advocating. What does he talk about? What does he stand for? Elon Musk has embraced the technocratic philosophy that says engineers, scientists, and technological experts should impact and eventually manage society by becoming stronger and more influential than government and private business altogether. What Musk and his fellow technocrats seek is to dismantle traditional government structures and merge the remaining pieces with their corporate oligarchy. We know that the technocrats have been influenced by the ideals of Curtis Yarvin and the Dark Enlightenment, which I covered on last week's show. Or the week before, I believe. You can find that at our website. You can also find my articles about that when you learn about the men who influenced Peter Thiel and some of the other technocrats. And these are just hacks. These are just nerds who yearn for the days when, in their own words, a national CEO can run the country like a monarchy. That's literally what the people, along with Peter Thiel and others, are advocating for. But to do this, first they have to convince you, Joe and Jane public, that their efforts at efficiency are simply aimed at revealing waste and bringing corruption to light. And this is where people like to talk shit to me and say, oh, what, Derrick, are you against shrinking the government? Are you against exposing corruption? Of course not. Let's expose it all. Let's bring everything out. But recognize that what you're witnessing is a dismantling of the government, not so we can get to some conservative, dream of small, limited government or some libertarian or anarchist dream of little to no government at all. That's not what they're doing. These are not anarchists. These are not libertarians. They're not even conservatives. They're not even small government people. Trump and his team have proven time and time again, they'll use government if it serves their needs. And they have no principles, no consistency. So what we're witnessing is not about making government more efficient and smaller. It's a deconstructing of the government itself to remake it into a technocracy. And where the original technocrats aim to centrally plan and manage society with the machines, the modern technocrats aim to do the same with artificial intelligence. A quick search, and this was just a couple days ago. You can search this now, and I'm sure you'll find more. But a quick search of DOGE and AI showed the following headlines. Elon Musk's DOGE is feeding sensitive federal data into AI to target cuts. DOGE will use AI to assess the responses from federal workers who were told to justify their jobs via email. DOGE's plan to replace humans with AI are already underway. Democrats demand answers on DOGE's use of AI. Elon Musk wants to use AI to run U.S. government, but experts say it's a very bad idea. Now, you can go through and read all those, and I'm sure Trump supporters, Musk supporters will say, that's just left-wing propaganda. You must have voted for Kamala Harris, blah, 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 whatever. But the facts are there, my friends. We already can see that Elon is starting to use AI to decide which employees he should fire, starting to automate certain human tasks with AI chatbots, and is considering handing over even more tasks that humans typically would do to this rapidly advancing technology. Now, some of you could argue, well, that's just how things are going to go, Derrick. AI is going to improve our lives, and there will be some people who lose jobs. And I agree with you. That is absolutely going to happen. But we don't need a billionaire who also happens to be invested in AI and who has his own Grok AI via Twitter X to be the one running the show. And also, maybe some of us don't think that AI should be involved in every aspect of our lives, but I guess we're not being a voice. We know that the Trump administration is testing a chat bot with 1,500 federal employees, which they said they might make it even more employees by this coming week. According to this report I found, Thomas Shedd, who's a former Tesla engineer and now a director of the Technology Transformation Services within the GSA, which is the agency testing out the chatbot, he said in a recent meeting that decreasing the size of the federal government presents, quote, a huge opportunity for technology and automation to come in full force. They want an AI government. This should come as no surprise, because if you've been paying attention to the recent deportation situation with the students that are, at risk of being deported for protesting Israel, apparently the Trump administration is already using an AI, what they call catch and revoke program, to determine which pro-Palestine, or as they call it, pro-Hamas student protesters to expel from the United States. So think about how scary that is. An AI catch and revoke program might already be in charge of deciding who gets to stay here and who leaves. And this is sort of coincidental when you recognize that the World Economic Forum, do you guys know this? They launched what they call the AI Governance Alliance in June 2023 with the goal of establishing global best practices for AI governance. And you can find this on their website, AI Governance Alliance. We are transforming how artificial intelligence shapes our world. Committed to fostering inclusive, ethical, and sustainable AI, we are driving change across industries. And this was last May in 2024, they had their first big meeting in San Francisco with 118 leaders of public and private sectors, civil society, to advance the objectives of the AI Governance Alliance. This is just another example, my friends, of where Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and the so-called tech populists in Trump's second administration, where they are all calling for a world that is pretty close, if not the exact same, to what the UN World Economic Forum progressive cabal is calling for. I'm sure you guys have seen the memes out there. You got Klaus Schwab on one side saying mRNA vaccines, and people are like, no. Then it says brain chips, and people are like, no. And then it says AI governance, no. And then they saw Elon Musk doing the same thing, and you got the MAGA hats cheering it on, right? I mean, it's insane. Like Musk and his cohorts, they're claiming that we need to merge with AI to survive. We need to put chips in our brains. We need to inject mRNA cancer vaccines, or we need to accept transhumanism so that we can fight the other side. That's what Elon likes to say, that's our best bet for the future, is that we merge with AI, and it's benevolent AI, and that allows us to thrive in the face of the bad people. But in reality, they are selling the American public the exact same dystopian vision as Klaus Schwab. And this is what I call the great inversion, my friends. I've been writing about this since 2023. You are witnessing a false awakening, a false binary, another one designed to keep you trapped in the left-right paradigm, to keep you trapped thinking that if the progressives and Biden and Obama and Harris and these crazy people and Klaus Schwab and George Soros, if they want something and it sounds like transgenderism. It sounds like wokeism and chips in the brain and mRNA vaccines. That's bad. But if it's coming from Elon Musk, the good billionaire, and Donald Trump and Marco Rubio, the other, oh wait, I thought he was a neocon. I guess he's cool again. And JD Vance and all the Peter Thiel acolytes. And even though they're saying the same thing, it's different, guys. This is different. This is the tech populists, the tech bros. They're into crypto. It's totally different. It's not the exact same thing. Unfortunately, my friends, that is not true. This is why it's so brilliant. They're literally dividing the masses and making them believe they are fighting, sort of that there's an opponent that they're fighting. But in reality, they're leading both of these groups, those who might fall into following the World Economic Forum, United Nations, Obama, Biden, Harris, etc., that whole cabal, George Soros, whatever bad guy you want to throw out there. Those people, they're headed towards you owe nothing and be happy. They might not realize it. But the difference is that the Trump supporters think that they're resisting that, but they're actually falling prey to the same thing. And this is my point about how DOGE is, in that case, efficiency is absolutely a gateway to technocracy. All right, I have a couple more stories I want to share with you on this DOGE tip before we move on to the next story talking about Yemen and Israel, which is also extremely important. We're going to get into that. Again, this article that I was sharing with you is at The Last American Vagabond. You can find it there. I just published it this weekend. It's called DOGE Is Efficiency a Gateway to Technocracy? And I think hopefully you guys got the picture by this point. But I want to touch base on the story I talked about last week about DOGE. First, here's a new one I found called Who's Running the DOGE Wrecking Machine? This is for the researchers in the room. The world's richest man or a little-known bureaucrat? Insiders tell ProPublica that Amy Gleason is only in charge on paper, while Musk's top lieutenants really run DOGE. One person who hasn't been in meetings with Gleason described her as having little to no actual decision-making responsibility. So for those of you who don't know, Amy Gleason is the woman that technically, according to the papers, she is the one who is the DOGE acting administrator since nearly day one. But ProPublica says she does not appear to be running the budget slashing group. According to interviews with 6 current and former government officials, all spoke on the condition of anonymity for fear of losing their jobs. This is just, I'm just dropping that piece out there for those who want to dive into who is Amy Gleason and who these other people are, because they do name a few names of people who work with Musk and who seem to really be doing the actual work here. And you can go into this and dive deeper into that. And that sort of picks up on a thread of these 2 articles that I talked about last week. This is from the New York Times, the people carrying out Musk's plan at DOGE. And they did a great job here. You can see Amy Gleason, Elon Musk, Steve Davis is another important name to look into, Brad Smith. These are all the different staffers that have been identified that are involved in DOGE. This is not doxing them. These are people who are literally making choices to fire Americans. And so we should know who they are, especially because DOGE, as I said, is still kind of in this legal gray area where nobody even really knows if it's a real government agency or not. Many of these people are former employees or current employees of Tesla or Twitter and other companies associated with Musk's. And some of them are very young, like in their early 20s. They're just software engineers and coders who have a hard-on for Elon and kiss his ass, and they'll do whatever he says. But and here's another one from Vanity Fair also, the woman who is not Musk is definitely 100% for sure running DOGE hand to God. And, they're basically talking the same thing about Amy Gleason and same kind of issues. But what I was arguing last week when I was looking at this story is that I said, I bet if we just start to look into some of these names, and I haven't had the time to do it yet, but this is another research project for anybody who wants to take it up, to start looking into these names, to look into their history, look into their employment history, and to see how many of them have worked with Peter Thiel or connected to Peter Thiel. The Thiel connection is important, as I covered in my documentary, because he is a steering committee and member of the Bilderberg Group, because he is the co-founder of Palantir, which was honestly created by the CIA to be a private version of the post 9/11 total information awareness program. And I was just kind of guessing. I was like, I bet if we looked into these people, we'd find some Peter Thiel connections. Well, guess what? A couple days after I did that show last week, somebody sent me this article, which was published on March 7th. This is from Business Insider. Exclusive. We found a DOGE guy at NASA because his Google Calendar was public. Okay, so they're kind of making fun of this guy. Like, okay, there's a DOGE employee. He's apparently working at NASA, and he left his calendar public, and they were able to, find out about some of his meetings. That is what is important to me, because this is where we see the Peter Thiel connections. This person is Riley Sennett, 26 years old, listed as a senior advisor in an internal NASA directory. His name and involvement with Doge have not been previously reported. Like many other Doge workers, he deleted his LinkedIn and made his X account private. However, he did not make his Google calendar linked to his personal address private. Anyone with the address could see every appointment he had on his calendar going back to 2016. January 6th, for example, the calendar included a 15-minute event titled Riley Senate and Doge Recruiting. Now let's go on to the stuff that I really care about. Where we go, let's just go ahead and hit Peter Thiel, see what comes up. Okay. Last March, his calendar noted a scheduled Zoom call called about a venture role with the Founders Fund, one of the first investors in SpaceX. In May, the calendar showed a recruiter call with Palantir, the data firm co-founded by Elon Musk ally and conservative kingmaker Peter Thiel. What they also don't mention is that the Founders Fund is also a Peter Thiel project. So this one guy, 26 years old, who's working at NASA for Doge, he had in his calendar last March meetings with the Founders Fund, which is a Peter Thiel firm. And then in May, a recruitment call with Palantir, which is Peter Thiel's private surveillance firm. And then in April, another one titled Anduril Opportunity Chat. Anduril is a defense technology company founded by Palmer Luckey and with investments from Peter Thiel. So literally in the month of March, April, and May of last year, this guy who's now with Doge had several meetings with Peter Thiel. Also, just last week, his calendar showed meetings with two partners of the venture capital firm Thrive Capital. What they don't tell you here is that Thrive Capital is also a Peter Thiel firm. So that's just one guy, okay? And this dude wasn't even listed in the other one. Like I said, this is their first time being able to reveal him. His name is Riley Senate. We can go back over here to the New York Times article. They list a lot of people, but when you Control F Riley Senate, they don't have him in there. So this is just one example. Like I said, if anybody wants to take me up on this offer and send me the research, go find this article, The People Carrying Out Musk's Plans at Doge from the New York Times, February 27th. Start to look up these names, start to see how many of them are connected to Peter Thiel. I guarantee you there's more connections than what we're just seeing here. But I've been able to at least already confirm that one person with Doge is in the Peter Thiel verse, and just crazy to me. I mean, like, I couldn't have predicted that any better. And it wasn't even really a prediction. It was just, I think at some point you kind of have to expect the swamp creatures are going to be in the swamp. And yeah, it is what it is. But how many Trump supporters out there are even paying attention to that? How many Luke Krakowskis and Ian Carrolls and Joe Rogans and DC Drano and all these freaking right-wing Zionist influencers on Twitter who are just kissing Trump and Musk's ass? How many of them even know the name Peter Thiel? And the ones that do, how many of them talk about it to their audiences? Probably not too many, because their money's coming from Rumble, and Peter Thiel also helped fund Rumble. So it's just another one of those topics that these folks in the so-called independent media, what we should more accurately call the mainstream alternative media, won't touch. But we will here at The Conscious Resistance and at thelastamericanvagabond.com. We're going to take a quick break and come back and talk about Yemen. Stay tuned, everybody.
Are you using your phone, or is it using you? Rise above mass surveillance and discover a phone that protects your privacy and communications.
Above Phone does everything your old phone does, without tracking you, while giving you complete control over your phone and apps. We are better than big tech. It works with any cell service. No forced logins, no advertising or tracking. Download apps privately. Control your phone and its apps with secure hardware. Introducing Above Suite. Protects your internet traffic. Private email on any device. Video call with friends privately. Encrypted chat, calls, and internet phone. Protect your searches and get results. Don't worry if you're new. Every phone includes a free 45-minute live call. You also get free email and chat support, free guides and video courses. We can take back our technology. We're here to help with tools and education. You have the power.
Rise above with Above Phone.
AbovePhone.com.
All right, that's the Above Phone. That's my friend Hakeem Anwar. If you're curious about that, you can go to abovephone.com/TCRN Broze. Let me check that for you in just a second. Yeah, just one of our sponsors. I only work with people who I know personally and support directly. I want to mention again, for those of you who tuned in late, that we are currently doing a crowdfunding campaign for the Pyramid of Power. The final episode of the Pyramid of Power is coming up, guys. I'm so excited for this. I'm actually every day this week, besides stopping to do this show and stopping to eat and go on a walk so I don't lose my mind, pretty much just doing my best to not be distracted and to work on the Pyramid of Power script. I will be doing another deep dive next week, I think, with you guys, and we're going to look at the top of the pyramid. I did a video maybe a couple months ago talking about the Jesuits and what role they may play at the top, and they definitely are up there. But we're going to talk about some others. But I do want to mention we have the Pyramid of Power crowdfunding campaign going on right now. I'll post the link in there. We've raised $4,200 out of $10,000. There's 13 days left. I really, really highly appreciate everybody who has contributed to this, and it's going to be an epic episode that I look forward to sharing with you guys and going down the rabbit hole. So if you can support, please visit the link that is in your comments right about now and make a contribution. We're about to dive into Yemen, and this is a big story, but I do want to also mention, that I am going to be having another discussion with Ian Carroll. I just mentioned Ian Carroll a moment ago, and Ian and I are on mutually agreeable terms. Ian, if you hear this, you know that I've said all this to your face. I don't trust Ian. I don't trust Ian fully, and I have my reasons, but I also am willing to have a dialogue with him, and I respect that he's willing to have a dialogue with me. You guys might remember that prior to the election, Ian and I had this 2-hour discussion where I mentioned everything about Peter Thiel, mentioned the Zionism, and gave him a lot of information, much of which he said he hadn't heard before, and he was very, willing to learn and to listen and everything. But ultimately, he went and voted for Trump, and he told his audience to vote for Trump. And it was just, to me, that's just like, I don't know, there's some big disconnect there. Nevertheless, me and Ian can stay on good enough terms, and we decided that we want to have another discussion because as of this Friday will basically be 60 days of Trump's second administration. And so Ian and I are going to do a discussion. We're setting down the date. I actually just got a message from him from a moment ago. We're setting up the date right now. It'll probably be next week instead of this Friday as we were originally planning, but it will be happening this month. And we're going to do a discussion on the good, the bad. I'll let him say everything he thinks positive, that Trump has done. I will be open-minded to that, and I will also be extremely critical, and I will definitely be bringing all the receipts about the Peter Thiel connection and so many other things. So highly, highly, highly encourage you guys to stay tuned for that. And I do want to give credit to Ian, despite our differences of opinion, for you to be willing to come sit down with me and talk to me and actually further the conversation. That's one thing I do agree with, that if we're going to evolve as people, which is going to be our concluding story tonight, why we need emotional intelligence and emotional maturity and spiritual intelligence and spiritual maturity, we need to be willing to talk to people who we don't agree with. And I definitely don't agree with Ian on many things, but nevertheless, we're going to have that conversation. So this week, the U.S. government, not you, not me, we'll talk more about that, how you're not the government, you're not the military, but the U.S. government, under the direction of President Donald Trump, has started to bomb Yemen, and this led to the death of civilians. We're being told this is because the Houthi rebels, which are sponsored by Iran and funded by them, have been launching attacks. The claim is over 170 of them on American aircraft carriers, and so the U.S. had to respond. What you're not being told is that this story actually started much earlier than just this last week. I know that these things kind of pop up and everybody likes to act like they're an expert. I'm definitely not an expert, but I have been paying attention over the last decade. And I remember all the different times that we've heard about the Saudis starving the Yemenis, the people, and the sort of proxy war between Israel, Iran via Yemen. Like there's a lot more going on than what people who are just picking up and paying attention to Fox News or Rumble really understand. And so that's what we're going to talk about. Let's go ahead and check this out right now. So I tweeted this the other day. So let me get this straight. The peace president, who many of you voted for because he was anti-war, is dropping bombs. One second. Excuse me, I had to blow my nose. The peace president, who many of you voted for because he was anti-war, is dropping bombs and killing civilians in Yemen, one of the poorest countries in the region, at the behest of the Zionists. And we're supposed to believe he's a peace president? No, in fact, you fell for it again. This post has been viewed over 120,000 times on X. It's got 5,000 likes and hundreds of comments, lots of people talking shit to me. But we're going to break down what I mean by this. Here's a report from Dropsite News. I do encourage you to check them out. Some of their politics are left-leaning, and some of you might not like that. But generally speaking, they do a lot of great reporting. With massive airstrikes on Yemen, Trump intensified undeclared war against the poorest country in the Arab world. Dozens of civilians were killed in U.S. bombings across Yemen as Trump vows to unleash overwhelming lethal force to stop the Houthi naval blockade targeting Israel's war on Gaza. And they go into describing some of the people who've been killed. And of course, anytime innocent people are killed, it's fucked up. It doesn't matter. The bigger picture does matter, like who the players are. But at the end of the day, human beings always suffer. It's not the Houthis or the Iranian government that's suffering. It's not the U.S. government that's suffering. It's the people that will suffer. The New York Times reported that Saturday's strikes in Yemen hit radar, air defense, and missile and drone systems, although it remains unclear if significant weapons arsenals were targeted. U.S. officials also claimed that they targeted at least one Houthi senior commander, but no other details have been provided. And in response, Yemen's Houthi-led army forces launched 18 ballistic and cruise missiles and a drone at the USS Harry S. Truman in the Red Sea. Predictably, this has got all the freaking the right-wing statists flipping out and saying, you attack America, you better be ready for the consequences. Trump's just doing what we voted for. Man, it's all up in these comments. If anybody wants to go have a ball, go ahead and just look at the comments here for some of the people who are trying to convince me that I'm a moron. He's not bombing the country, Yemen. He's bombing Iranian-backed militants. Stop gaslighting. Why is Yemen poor? Could it be that they prefer to fight than think? Just this super bigoted American, centric view, and basically just people, again, protecting American citizens and American vessels abroad should be expected. Someone shoots a U.S. ship or aircraft, yes, you're going to eliminate the threat. Simple as that. That's not a war. But we have to ask, why are the U.S. aircraft vessels even over there? Because the U.S. is a freaking empire. We have no business being over there. But as I said, it's a little bit bigger than that. We have to go back a little bit further. So let's take a look. This is coming from the Arab Center, Washington, D.C. And I just pulled up a bunch of different links. I know the people who don't want to believe it are going to say, that's a left-wing link. That's CNN. That's just, progressive propaganda. But the facts are the facts. And you can go out there and find Trump's own executive orders. You can find Trump's words from his first administration. This one says, Trump embraces the Saudi vision of the Yemeni conflict. Like the U.S. leadership, U.S. President Donald Trump sees the Yemen conflict as a case of Iranian adventurism that needs to be rolled back and defeated. His uncritical view of the Saudi-led campaign against the Houthi rebels and their allies is based on a rather simplistic view of the Middle East, pitting friends like Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates against adversaries like Iran and its proxies. So the current leadership in Riyadh, which is the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia, the Saudi kingdom, he's been pursuing an aggressive posture, this is back in 2017, against Iran's proxies, not only in Yemen, but also in other countries. However, Trump's top advisors while they hold anti-Iran views, see some danger in being in lockstep with Saudi Arabia on Yemen. You can go further into this. The point is, you can see here's Trump and his love affair with the Saudis. The Saudis were very pleased that Trump took the first foreign trip as a president to their kingdom. The May 2017 visit not only underscored Saudi Arabia's prominence as the leading country in the Arab world, but also put Trump squarely on the side of the Saudis in their conflict with Iran over regional dominance. And you guys might remember, this is the trip where Trump had the sword and he danced with them, and they all put their hands on that crazy orb, looking like some freaking psychopaths like they are. Hopefully you guys know what I'm talking about. If not, you need to go find that picture. It's insane. Then we got another one from, when was this? 2018. In Yemen, Trump's America First has morphed into Saudi First. Human rights activists, aid workers, and members of Congress welcomed Friday's news that the Trump administration would finally end refueling of the Saudi coalition in Yemen. It seemed that after years of pressure, the administration was at last heeding calls to diminish the U.S.'s role and quite literally fueling the bloody war and world's worst humanitarian crisis. If you guys have never paid attention to this, the Yemeni people have been starving for years. This whole thing started in 2014 during the Obama administration. He was kind of part of it, not as broadly supporting as Trump. But the Saudis have been trying to starve out the Yemenis for quite some time. And they say it's a way to kind of attack Iran. This is why it's called a proxy war. It was yet another reminder that when it comes to Yemen, instead of making decisions independently, the U.S. remains at the beck and call of Saudi Arabia. For 4 years, the U.S. has supported Saudi Arabia in the war in Yemen, although intelligence sharing with coalition forces, coalition forces, logistic support, and facilitating billions of dollars in arms sales. This is just like them giving billions of dollars in arms to the Israelis to kill the Palestinians. They give billions of dollars of arms to the Saudis to kill the Yemenis. Among the weapons sold include a laser-guided bomb that was used to kill 40 Yemeni children on a school bus in August. You guys might remember that. President Barack Obama had halted the sale of precise munitions after the deadly bombing of a funeral in October 2016 that killed 155 people. But these were reinstated just 5 months later under Trump's administration. It passes from one baton to the other. Obama knew Trump was going to restart it, so he gets to end it at the end of his term, and then it comes back, and they just play this game. I will give credit in a moment to Biden, who actually did limit some of the funding, or whoever was making it, whoever had their hand up Biden's ass that day as his puppet. Saudi Arabia is one of the largest buyer of U.S. weapons, racking up $14 billion in purchases since Trump's announced a $110 billion deal with the kingdom in May 2017. So that was 7-8 years ago, right? And then, of course, we all know about the killing of Jamal Khashoggi, which Trump did nothing about and said nothing about. Trump's America's First has morphed into Saudi First, and innocent Yemeni women, children, and men are paying the price of U.S. involvement in the conflict, which has contributed to thousands of civilians' death, the majority of which will result from airstrikes carried out by the Saudi-led coalition. In addition, millions of people have been without access to clean water. The cholera outbreak continues to accelerate at 10,000 new cases per week, and the population is at risk of famine. Many of the 500,000 children suffer from chronic malnourishment. This was back in 2017, guys. That's what I'm saying. This shit didn't just start last week. So if you just paying attention and you're listening to all the right-wing influencers and the mainstream alternative media tell you that Trump's just defending America, there's bigger plays at here. For one, you have to understand that the Houthis, and I'm not justifying anything they do and saying they're great guys or anything, but they are at least claiming that the reason they are bombing these U.S. naval ships, not only for the fact that why the heck is the empire over there, but because the Israelis continue to blockade aid that's supposed to be getting to the Palestinians. And since the Houthis are allied with Hamas and with the Palestinians, as well as Hezbollah, not saying that those are good guys, but they're allies, they are saying that the attacks on the U.S. carrier ships, aircraft carriers, are a response to Israel continuing to block aid. I'm not saying that justifies it, but I'm just saying so many small-minded people, all they hear is, oh, the U.S. ship was attacked, and they're not thinking about the bigger implications of the fact that the U.S. is a freaking empire, and why the heck are we over there in the first place? So they're just stuck on the latest bit of news. They're not going back and doing some history. Let's continue on with Trump's history in Yemen. October 2018, Trump begins new push to end the war in Yemen. Now, this is when, towards the end of his administration, he actually did kind of back off a little bit. I'm giving credit where credit's due. Nearly 4 years after the war in Yemen, eventually killing at least 16,000 civilians and creating a humanitarian crisis, the U.S. is finally saying enough, at least in terms of strong statements. The Trump administration issued 2 strong statements on Tuesday to call for an end of the war between the Houthi rebels and the Yemeni government, powered by U.S. allies, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. The statements were hailed as a breakthrough by some humanitarian groups, but others warned that it must be followed by concrete actions, which Congress has so far seen no signs of. So we'll give Trump credit for some nice words, but did he end up doing anything other than saying this must come to an end? Look at this up at the top of the news, guys. Like, I'm looking at an article from 2018, and it's saying breaking: Israel hits Gaza with extensive strikes, killing dozens and ending the ceasefire. The ceasefire was never real, but now even the mainstream's admitting Israel violating the ceasefire and is killing more people. Wow, that's happening in the background too. Oh, but the Yemenis are the problem. Here's another one. Trump vetoes measure to end U.S. involvement in Yemen war. Wow, why would Trump do this? This is April 2019, Trump's last year in office during his first administration. Trump vetoed a resolution passed by Congress. So this was a bill that Congress actually wanted to pass to end U.S. military assistance in Saudi Arabia's war in Yemen. And Trump issued his second veto during his presidency, and Congress did not have the power to override it. But passing this never-before-used war powers resolution was viewed as a milestone for lawmakers who have shown a renewed interest and or willingness to assert their war-making authority. Trump said The resolution is an unnecessary, dangerous attempt to weaken my constitutional authorities, endangering the lives of American citizens and brave service members both today and in the future. Of course, he's just acting on the behest of his Saudi buddies. And as we said earlier, the U.S. under Trump gave billions of dollars to arm the Saudis in their fight against the Yemenis and against the Houthi rebels. And they have been bombing them since 2014. This is the poorest country in the Middle East. And unfortunately, they're continuing to suffer now as they're being attacked by the U.S. government once again. Now, I'll give credit again. Statement from President Joe Biden on coalition strikes. This is where we're going to give credit, not in a good way. But last year, 1 year ago, Biden, before he left office again, or whoever was puppeting him that day, bombed Yemen as well. So this went from Obama, it went to Trump, Biden, and then back to Trump. And Biden at the time said, today at my direction, U.S. military forces, together with the UK and support from Australia, Bahrain, Canada, Netherlands. So all of our friends in Australia, the UK, Canada, Netherlands, guess what? Your tax dollars went to this too. Successfully conducted strikes against a number of targets in Yemen used by Houthi rebels to endanger freedom of navigation in one of the world's most vital waterways. So even the Biden administration got in on the fun and did some of the bombing. And let's go back to just a couple months ago. Israel airstrikes hit Yemen's rebel-held capital and port city after Houthi attacks target Israel. So Israel will play the victim December 2024. A series of intense Israeli airstrikes shook Yemen's rebel-held capital and a port city early Thursday, killing at least 9 people. Thursday's strikes risk further escalating the conflict, whose attacks on the Red Sea corridor have drastically impacted global shipping. And of course, here we stand now in March 2025, and this has escalated. But I'm just trying to give you guys a little more context. Now let's bring this all home. Let's all wrap it up in a nice bow. What is this really about, my friends? How many of you guys out there in internet land remember General Wesley Clark and his infamous talking about the 7 nations they wanted to invade after 9/11? We all know Iraq was on the list, Afghanistan, Pakistan, no, not Pakistan, Yemen, Syria, and it all ended with Iran. Libya, of course, was on that list. That's what this is about, my friends. This is coming to a head, and it's going to be at least a threat. I'm not going to try to fearmonger like a lot of channels say, we're about to have World War III. I can't predict that. I don't know that. I kind of think the talk of World War III is sometimes just the thing to keep you on edge and afraid and spending more money and all that sort of thing. But when you look at where the situation is headed, my friends, it's about going to war with Iran. So let's take a look at a couple more articles here in this discussion on the Yemen-Israel proxy war here. This is coming from Defense One, which is a military website. Iran on notice, says Pentagon, of ongoing strikes against Houthis. U.S. forces are continuing strikes on Houthi sites in Yemen that began over the weekend, Pentagon officials told reporters on Monday, and the strikes will continue until the terrorist group agrees to stop shooting at ships in the Red Sea. The Houthis had apparently not attacked a ship since January when Israel and Hamas agreed a ceasefire, but said last week they would respond to Israel's airstrikes and food blockade in Gaza, as I was saying, by resuming attacks on Israeli ships, whose loose definition has in the past included a broad swath of vessels. Saturday's initial wave of U.S. airstrikes struck 30 targets and drone launching sites, they said. So this, though, is, according to the U.S. government officials, putting Iran on notice. One of the Pentagon officials, Sean Parnell, said, quote, I think President Trump has made it very clear he's putting Iran on notice. Now, let's go back a little bit further to Vice President J.D. Vance. In 2024, J.D. Vance vows to deepen support for Israel and slams Biden's approach to Iran. You guys might know this famous quote he did. Let's see. Control F. Here's Vance on Fox News. Joe Biden has done nothing to help our ally Israel. Joe Biden has made it harder and harder for Israel to win that war. He has prolonged the war to take out Hamas. And what does he think we should do? Vance says, you want 2 things to happen. Number 1 is you want to get this war over quickly as possible, because the longer it goes, the harder the situation on Israel is. It's so hard for the Israelis. But what does he say you should do? The most important part of the doctrine of Trump foreign policy is you don't commit troops unless you really have to. But when you do, you punch, and you punch hard. And he's speaking in terms of Iran. And so this is the kind of guy who's also a Peter Thiel acolyte, who's now vice president of the United States. And then let's just go one more look. Here's Trump himself posting on his platform, Truth Social, just today. Let nobody be fooled. The hundreds of attacks, blah, blah, blah. Let's get to the point. We don't need to read his propaganda. Every shot fired by the Houthis will be looked upon from this point forward as being a shot fired from the weapons and the leadership of Iran. And Iran will be held responsible and suffer the consequences, and those consequences will be dire. This is what they've wanted the entire time. You think this is happening by mistake? I mean, I would even wager that maybe the whole attacks on the ships could be false flags. There's no hard evidence of that yet. I'm just saying I wouldn't be surprised, because we know that they've wanted war with Iran for years. Going back to the Bush administration, Obama administration, John Bolton, the first Trump administration, Trump allegedly showed some restraint the first administration. And so many of you were like, no, this is why we need Trump in office, because he's going to end the wars and he's going to, there won't be World War III like there will be with Kamala. Well, what do you think is going to happen if Iran and Israel go to war with the United States backing them on one side, Saudi Arabia, probably Russia getting in there as well as some of these other countries? That could be a World War III situation. Not saying it's going to happen, but let's go to one or two other points here. Dr. Ron Paul writing this article today: President Trump, stop bombing Yemen and exit the Middle East. Always a man of common sense and always sticking by his principles. Way more intelligent and principled than Donald Trump ever will be. Just want to read this last section here. The U.S. government, starting with Biden and continuing now with Trump, seems eager to make this our war, even though the Red Sea shipping is of minor importance to the U.S. economy. The real America First policy would be following the Russian and Chinese lead and staying out of the conflict. It's not our war. End U.S. military involvement in the Middle East, and our troubles will disappear. It really is that simple. And then I made this post here on Twitter saying the principle is anti-war all the time, regardless of how unpopular, regardless of what excuses they shove down your throat to get you to justify murder and pillaging of violence and pillaging of resources. No, not many people can actually do this. Not many people can actually stay principled and realize that it doesn't matter what kind of story they come up with. Oh, they're bombing U.S. ships. They're using children as body shields. They're throwing babies out of the incubators. I mean, how many times do we have to see fabricated, fake, garbage stories, propaganda for war from the military-industrial complex come out and pop up before people recognize that they're... And Thomas Massie, I'll give him credit. I know there's people who have been critical of him lately for different reasons, but he is rightfully pointing out that every time you cut money from one war or one conflict, like he said, okay, they're going to take away money from the Ukraine conflict. I think they said 50 billion. He tweeted about a week ago saying, we can expect another conflict because the military industrial complex is hungry and they're not just going to let $50 billion go away because one conflict ends. No, instead, they're going to call for a new conflict. They're going to support a new conflict. And well, right on time, we got the Houthis and Israel. Like I said, it's not that it just started. This has been going on, but the public's attention quickly shifts from Ukraine to now Houthis, and everybody in Trump MAGA universe is like, oh my God, I never heard of the Houthis, or I don't even know where Yemen's at on a map, but they must be bad people. So bomb the fuck out of them because America first, right? God, people are losing their minds out here, my friends. It's getting rough out here. It's getting rough. All right. I got two more stories here. We're going to go through one more, and then we'll take a quick break and we'll wrap up. We are going to have a brand new music video that we're going to play tonight. I appreciate everybody who's tuned in. My name is Derrick Broze. You're watching The Conscious Resistance Live. We do this every week. We try to bring you hard-hitting investigative journalism, deep dives, fact-based with all the sources and everything you need to know to make your own decisions, and to focus on solutions, and to highlight conscious music, and to try to have a good time. So if you want to support my work, you can go to theconsciousresistance.com/invest. Now, some of you might remember that back in September of 2024, I was traveling to the United Kingdom, to London, and then to Bath for the People's Reset UK, which is an amazing event, and I'm so grateful to have that experience. But unfortunately, flying into the UK is a bit hectic. The UK, as with Canada and some other countries and Europe, and of course the United States, but some of these other countries are a little bit more aggressive, are not very friendly to free speech, and they're becoming increasingly authoritarian and fascist towards what you post on social media and how hate speech can be used against you. I'm sure you guys have seen some of these stories. Insane. Like in Germany, I saw the 60 Minutes report a couple weeks ago where they were interviewing German officials, and they were basically saying, no, you don't have a right to say mean things on the internet. And they actually went with them and filmed them as they went to somebody's house and arrested them or detained them temporarily for some shit they posted on the internet. It's crazy, but that's where we're at, guys. So When I started to hear from some friends and see some different videos posted around by not too reputable sources claiming even Americans, even foreigners can now be held or potentially arrested in the United Kingdom for stuff they posted on the internet. I thought, okay, like I had a good friend reach out to me and say, hey, Derrick, what do you know about this? Is this true or is this fake news? I don't want to share fake news. I said, let me go ahead and dive into this and see what I can find. And I'm going to share that with you. It seems to be fairly accurate. Well, I didn't actually finish my story there. When I arrived to the UK, myself and my family ended up being detained for 5 hours by the UK Border Patrol. I can't remember what they call them over there, but it was myself and Miriam, both of our moms, Miriam's sister, one of our good friends. It was like 6 of us, 7. Oh, my stepdad as well. We all got detained for 5 hours. They kept asking us and questioning us all kinds of different things. They took out every card from my mom's wallet and everybody's wallet and said, how much money do you have on this card? How much money do you have on this card? Who paid for the Airbnbs? Who paid for the flights? And then once they started learning more about who I was, they started asking me, okay, what's the pyramid of power? Are you one of these people who believe pedophiles run the government? What's the People's Reset? What's the Freedom Cell Network? What's holistic anarchism? All kinds of questions. And I told them, like, look, I'm just being real with you, man. I don't think any of this is your business. At the same time, this is the guy that gets to decide, are we allowed to enter the country? This all started because we, as a family, we collectively opted out of the facial recognition, which is totally legal and is your right to do in the UK and the US and many other places, although they won't tell you. And he swore to me, I'm not harassing you because you opted out. No, you're fine. You can do that. But it's a little suspicious, don't you think? And so they create this catch-22. Sure, yeah, you can opt out, but if you opt out, we're going to say you're suspicious and we're going to give you extra harassment. This went on and on and on for hours until eventually they brought out 3 counterterrorism officers dressed in suits. They were clearly the people in charge, and they started interrogating me and questioning me. I answered their questions, and then eventually they came back with our passports, and this little border agent who had his ego hurt came back and said, please follow me. And he walked us across the line, and he said, we have insufficient evidence to prevent you from entering this country. You're free to go. But we will be watching you on your trip, and we will be keeping up with where you go and what you do. That sucked. That was my first trip to the UK, and that was not a fun time. We still spent 2 weeks there, had an amazing time with friends, family, got to go to Denmark. Denmark was pretty chill, although they already have digital IDs. But still, this was a crazy situation. And the reason this topic matters to me is because we're talking about maybe coming back to the UK and doing the People's Reset UK again. But Miriam and other friends are like, I don't know if I want to go back, Derrick. So I started to look into this story to see if this is actually true. And this is what I found. This is from the organization that I'd never heard of called the Association for, let me see what their full name is. I don't want to mislead you. And I will admit, I will tell you right off the bat, they are, as you can see, a pro-life Christian organization. That doesn't mean that they can't do good work, but I just putting that out of the way. I'm trying to find what they're actually called. It's the ACLJ. Real quick. Okay, here we go. But they are a Christian organization. And I know for some people that means that they're biased, but at the end of the day, if they're doing good legal work, then it's great. The American Center for Law and Justice, they were founded in 1990. So they didn't just pop up, but they've been around for some time. They apparently have won some big court cases. And so they're the ones warning about this. The ACLJ warns about the dangers of UK speech laws and the potential impact on conservative Americans. I think it applies to all Americans, but you see how their bias is towards conservative Americans. As an American, you have enjoyed the freedom to travel to any country without the threat of arrest for your post on social media. Unfortunately, the concept of freedom of speech is non-existent in some countries, and the United Kingdom has specifically decided to target Americans. I don't know if they're specifically targeting Americans. That's what they're saying. But I think this could be used against Americans. The UK has declared that it will charge and prosecute Americans for their social media posts written while still in America if they have to travel to its borders. The ACLJ has prepared a legal memo detailing the specific laws at play and the dangers for Americans. Specifically, it details how your speech on the internet could violate the UK's broad hate speech laws, and you could be arrested as soon as you step foot in the UK for your posts back home. If an American speaks in the United States in a way that the UK officials construe as affecting their national interest or even producing substantial effects within the country, even if it's just a statement about your religion or your political stance, then you could be arrested upon entry to the UK. I think there's a little bit of fear mongering where they're trying to tell the Christians, like, they're going to arrest you just for being Christian when you get there. I don't think that's the case, but absolutely, they are arresting people for things they say online. The UK's Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, said at a press conference, "We will throw the full force of law at people, and whether you're in this country committing crimes on the streets or committing crimes from further afield online, we will come after you." And then British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said, "I guarantee you, you will regret taking part in this disorder directly or whipping up those whipping up this action online." That was related to some of the riots a couple months back. But nevertheless, they are claiming this. And interestingly, and I still have that freaking form somewhere that they held me with this whole UK counterterrorism outfit. And this is the law they specifically cited. They said that I was in violation of Public Order Act of 1986, which they didn't use this specific statute, but there was the same law. And so they can use Public Order Act of 1986, which criminalizes threatening, abusive, or insulting words, while the Communications Act of 2003 prohibits, quote, grossly offensive electronic messages. And the Online Safety Act will further restrict what the UK deems harmful online content. So they have this memo here. All of this is in the show notes. If you want to read it here, learn more about it. For anybody traveling to the UK, I don't know. I don't want to tell you don't travel. I don't want you to live in fear, but we should also just know our rights and know what the potential is. Can Americans visiting the UK be arrested for their online speech? It says the UK, of course, has jurisdiction over the actions of America that occur within its territory. If an American, while visiting the UK, were to engage in a conduct potentially in violation of the law, UK law, Americans could face criminal charges for their hate speech. Could a U.S. citizen be extradited for violating the UK hate speech laws? And they go on to provide some answers. I'm going to encourage you guys to check this out in the show notes, which will be posted at theconsciousresistance.com later tonight once we wrap up here. But this is some scary shit, man. This is also why whenever we were hosting the People's Reset, I invited a couple of speakers and they told me, "Sorry, Derrick, I'm not going to the UK. I don't go to the UK anymore. I'm not trying to get locked up. I don't even step foot there anymore." And I have seen this. Here's a comment saying podcasters in the UK will need a TV license. I did see something like that happening and things of that sort. It's crazy stuff, man. So apparently there is some element of truth there. I don't know that anybody, any foreigner, American or otherwise, has been arrested under these UK laws for traveling and then, the laws being applied to them, but it is a potential. And so I want to give credit to this American Center for Law and Justice for raising awareness on this. There is some truth to this. So if you see people talking about it on the interwebs, this is something that we probably should be thinking about and keeping an eye on, because it's only going to get worse. Free speech is quickly disappearing, and it's not been saved by Elon Musk, despite what some people want you to believe. It's unfortunately a little bit darker than that, and we have to stand up and fight for free speech. That's also why in the United States, when they want to deport people who are anti-Israel, even if you are pro-Israel, you should be fighting for their freedom to have the right to say those things. And otherwise, freedom of speech is going to continue to disappear, and before you know it, it will affect you. And it'll be like that old adage that, well, I didn't do anything when they came for the anti-Zionist protesters, and I didn't do anything when they came for the Christians, and I didn't do anything when they came for the libertarians, and then eventually they came for your group, and there was no one else there to stand for you. So let's not let that happen in the United States or anywhere else in the world. We're going to take one more quick break, come back with our final thought, our final story about why collectivism is a cancer on humanity, and why we need emotional and spiritual maturity and intelligence in order to continue to thrive into the future. And those of you who have eyes and ears and heart and mind and spirit to hear it, this is the message for you guys tonight. So please stay tuned. One more quick break, and we'll be right back. So I've recently partnered with my friend Sean Hawkins of the company Cultivated Mind. He focuses on organic mushroom extracts, which are designed to help you physically, mentally, and maybe even more than that. I've just been testing them out recently. You may have seen my interview with Sean discussing this. We went over some of the specific benefits of the various types of mushrooms that Sean uses. I think it's a really exciting product to be a part of, because not only are they organic, they're non-GMO, but if you know anything about mushrooms, as more and more of us have been learning about the benefits of mushrooms, not just psychedelic mushrooms, but all types of mushrooms, then you understand that they are a great boon to your health. So Sean recently hooked me up, and I've been trying the Brain Squared, which is for gut pea flower extract, ashwagandha. I also recently picked up the Radiant Energy, which is for pre and post workout. So I go to the gym 3 or 4 times a week, and now starting to take these before and after. These feature cordyceps, reishi, and chaga. And finally, he's got Immune Renew, which is obviously for immunity. This one features chaga, turkey tail, reishi, maitake, shiitake, and extract of nattokinase. I encourage you to go visit the website. It is cultivated-mind.com. And of course, we have a special deal and a discount for those of you who want to purchase them through my link at cultivated-mind.com/cm/broze, BROZE. You can check out the link on the screen right now, or wherever you're watching, check out the link below the video. All right, welcome back for our final segment here on the Conscious Resistance Live. I want to talk to you about collectivism, individuality, and the need for balance in these topics. And also, we're going to talk about this need for emotional maturity, for the conscious resistance, for a conscious evolution, which is what I've been fighting for the last 15 years and probably will spend the rest of my life fighting for it. Let's check out this tweet that I put together earlier today. I'll make that bigger. Collectivism is a cancer of the mind, especially when the collective is placed above the needs and the desires of the individual. For example, so many people have bought into the propaganda that, quote unquote, we are the government. Thus, if someone attacks a ship of the U.S. military, they say, we were attacked. Or if an American corporation like BlackRock buys ports on the Panama Canal, some people celebrate it and say, we are in control of it. No, you are not inherently going to benefit because an American corporation does something, and you're also not being attacked because of a ship owned by the U.S. empire is attacked. Let's get this straight. Neither I nor you are dropping bombs on other nations or killing civilians, and neither I or you are being attacked. Stop buying into this status propaganda and identifying with politicians or corporations or religious leaders, et cetera, et cetera. What I mean by that is any collective that wants you to kind of lose your individual identity and say, well, if the church is attacked, that's an attack against me. If Trump is attacked, that's an attack against me. If Obama's attacked, that's an attack against me. If BlackRock is attacked, that's an attack against me. If this U.S. government, the U.S. nation, or the military is attacked, that's an attack on me somehow, and people personalize it. We need to understand that we are all powerful, beautiful, and free individuals who can collaborate with other powerful, beautiful, and free individuals to do amazing things. But we need not allow this collectivist propaganda to subsume the individuals to this dangerous idea that the people are the government or the corporations or the religions or any other organization. Identify instead as an empowered individual, not a piece of the collective Borg. Now, I thought that was a simple enough statement. We got 400 plus interactions and stuff, but it sure triggered a lot of people. And I decided to elaborate a little further on this follow-up tweet. In my book, Reflections on Anarchy and Spirituality, which is book 1 of the Conscious Resistance trilogy, which I'll show you guys right there on screen. This is my first 3 books. The first one, Reflections on Anarchy and Spirituality, was published in 2015. And in 2015, I wrote an essay called Are We All One? Individualism versus Collectivism. And we talk about the need to balance the individual with the collective. Essentially, what I believe is individual personal liberty for collective liberation, but not putting the collective above the individual. And there's a lot of people that seem to have trouble with this, more than I thought in my audience. But let me see if I can explain it a little bit further. It's not that I don't believe that collectives exist. Like, for example, on one level, we are all part of the human family, the human collective, right? Simply because we're all humans. And maybe that's like the most basic broad collective we can be. Then beyond that, people get into things of like, well, for example, I'm Native on part of my family, so I guess I'm part of the Native American collective. Or maybe you're African American or African from Africa, wherever you're from, or you're Italian. So you consider yourself part of the collective of Italians or Mexicans or Americans or British folk. And we kind of have silly jokes, like we talk about stereotypes. Oh, Brits all act this way, and Americans all do this sort of thing, and Mexicans act this way. And in some cases, it can be true. They can be stereotypes. They can be caricatures of who we are, sometimes based in truth. But at the end of the day, you are an individual. You don't have to answer for all of the Mexicans in the world, or all of the women in the world, or all of the men in the world, or all of the Americans in the world. You are an individual. So if an American goes out and does some dumb shit, you don't have to answer for it just because you were born in the same piece of land as a quote unquote American. And if a woman does something ridiculous, you aren't to blame for that. And on the other hand, if an Australian does something amazing at the Olympics, people also like to collectivize that. And they say, oh yeah, we won. No, you didn't. The guy who went and did all the training and the effort and the work, or the woman who did, they won. And I guess they represented your country, but you didn't do shit but sit on the couch and eat chips and pizza. There's this collectivist mind virus that people buy into. And then the way we see that play out is somebody like me calls out Elon Musk, or calls out Donald Trump, or calls out Peter Thiel, or calls out a religion or anything, or a celebrity like Russell Brand. And then the swarm of people come and attack because they personally identify with this person. And I don't even want this from my audience. Guys, I'm your friend. I'm your, your ally in this fight for truth and freedom. But I don't need other people to identify with me and feel personally attacked if I'm criticized. And you don't need to feel personally attacked if somebody criticizes Donald Trump. But the powers that wish they were have indoctrinated so much of humanity to identify with the government. We did this. We're being attacked. But that's not you. That is a parasitic, predator, immoral, criminal entity, the government, that does not truly represent you. And so you don't need to personalize an attack when somebody calls out the crimes of the government. And in fact, you don't need to personally identify with Donald Trump or any of these other criminals when somebody rightfully calls them out. Instead, you should be able to be a mature human being and say, okay, you know what? I do like Trump, but this person is raising an important point. And as a critical thinker, I need to step back and question everything and think about this and say, should I really support this person? I don't know if I like the stance he's taking. This doesn't really align with my values and principles. Instead, a lot of people have this sort of knee-jerk reaction and think they're attacking Trump, so I must respond back and attack them as if I was being personally attacked, right? And it's a sad state of affairs. I think it's part of a sort of low level of thinking in the human mind. It's not very critical thinking at all. And I see this tied into other problems like humans thinking that, like the false binary, if you attack Trump, you must have voted for Harris. You must have liked Biden. Oh my God, guys, I can't tell you how many times I've heard that over the last few months. And I'm sure it's not going to go away. People who are going to continue to use those sort of low level, lack of thinking responses, knee-jerk response. Oh, somebody says they don't like this thing, so they must like the other thing. You guys heard me rant about this in the past. But I think this is a bigger problem of collectivism, where people buy into these ideas of collectives. That doesn't mean that we can't cooperate. I'm not against cooperation. I'm not some rugged individualist all the way. I believe in individual liberty, and I believe the more we empower individuals, then those individuals can rise to the level of saying, I want to collaborate and cooperate with other empowered individuals. And then guess what? You have collective action. That's why I say personal individual liberty for collective liberation. It's not collective action is more important than the individuals. So whatever's good for the collective, that's more important than what the individual wants. That's the problem. And that's led to all sorts of horrible things throughout history. And I don't support that for a second, for a moment, and I never will. But that doesn't mean I don't think we can't work in groups or that we can't collaborate in other ways. I simply think it means that we need to make sure that the smallest minority, the individual, is not forgotten in our pursuit of building this better world. And so many people throughout history have promised a utopia for the collective will or the collective good. And what they end up doing is becoming murderers to enforce their way. Because guess what? When some individuals say, hey guys, I don't know if I like this plan. Can I go a different way? They say, no, you can't go another way. You're a counter-revolutionary. You're an enemy of the state. We must have all of us doing the same thing. You must join the Borg. And why is that? Because the collectivists know that if the people see even just one person out there living freely, living happily out there, then it shatters their illusion of this collective good. And so instead, what they want, let's all suffer together. We're going to be poor together. We're going to be equal, but poor. Well, we won't own anything, but we promise we'll be happy. You can't have somebody out there living freely and being an example to others, because then what happens is the slaves start to wake up and they realize maybe this isn't the best thing for us. Maybe my individual liberty, my individual choices, my individual joy, my desires, my happiness does matter. And at the same time, that doesn't mean we have to go all the way to the other extreme of like individuals above everybody else, get whatever you want, screw other people over. No, I think that's what a lot of people think of when they hear individualism. They think of just this really extreme worst case scenario. I'm saying let's bring together this idea, this concept that we are all one, which is true on one level. Let's find the balance between the individuals and the collective, but let's not subvert one or the other over each other. I also want to show you guys this other tweet here that I mentioned. Get this one ready to go. This is me discussing the need for emotional and spiritual maturity. It's never been more clear that the reasons there is not yet a mass awakening of humanity, and likely never will be, are all mental, emotional, and spiritual. Physically, we outnumber them. However, the matrix our minds are trapped in prevents us from seeing our full potential. So we doubt that humans are capable of organizing without centralized, imposed hierarchies. We doubt ourselves. We don't see ourselves and each other as powerful, beautiful, capable, and free human beings who are creators of our own reality. We set arbitrary limits on ourselves and each other, doubting what we cannot yet see with our eyes, and shouting down those who dare dream of the so-called impossible. We turn our back on our ancestors who are standing with us and the coming 7 generations who are depending on us to step up and rise to the occasion. In general, we are taught to doubt ourselves, our powers, and our potential. Instead, we are taught and we reinforce to each other that, quote, this is just how the world is, and we're not capable of any better. Fuck that. Fuck all of that. I know I am doing everything in my capacity to help others in their journey, promote solutions for a better world, and most importantly, heal my own trauma and my own daddy and mommy issues while always staying alert to new levels and layers of propaganda to unlearn. Thankfully, I'm not alone. I know that there are so many of you out there, so many other leaders who are doing things in big and small ways, and I want you to know that I see you. To those of you who are the doubters, the naysayers, the doomers, the realists, and the pessimists, you're missing out, my friends, because we're building a better world, whether you like it or not. And it's not going to happen in politics, and it's not going to happen overnight. But if you just want to keep doubting your potential, if you want to keep yourself on that low level of thinking, vibration, frequency, however you want to think about it, you do you, my friend. You have the freedom to do so. But for myself and the other brilliant minds that I get to network around the world through the internet and through in-person events, we are focusing on how can we use our minds, our spirits, our hands, our hearts. How do we use old school technology and new technology? How do we use spirituality to build the parallel systems, economic systems, food systems, production and distribution, healthcare systems, technology, education, mindsets? This is what we're focused on. And it's 100% possible, and it's happening all right now. I feel so bad for those of you who are just tuned out and who are just listening to these garbage channels out there that don't help you see that there are real solutions. And I don't even claim that my solutions are the only ones that matter. I do think you should download my book, How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State, at theconsciousresistance.com/how-to, and buy a copy and share it with friends. I think there are ideas that will be valuable to you. But whatever it is, find solutions that work and recognize that there are so many of us out there who are fighting for these better solutions. Don't let the naysayers, the doomers, the real black pillars tell you that the only solution is more politicians, more voting, more giving away your own power and outsourcing it. No, the real solution, the conscious evolution that some of us are participating in. And like I said at the beginning of that tweet, I don't know if it's ever going to be a mass awakening, because the masses, the majority, they just follow what's put right in front of them. So they're going to do whatever they're told to for the most part. But what that means is those of us who can see a better way and know that we need to build parallel systems, alternative paths, so that the coming generations have a choice between you will own nothing and be happy, technocratic, 5G, smart city, dystopia, and permaculture, paradise, free-range children, clean water, organic food, clean skies, all the beautiful things that we want. We are the ones that have to put in the work and the time and energy, those of us who can see it. And guess what? As we build these parallel systems, there will be threats. Sure, the bad guys might try to come stop us. And guess what? If they do, I'd be happy to die on my piece of land, guys. I've had so many people tell you, oh, you really think, Derrick, they're going to let you guys go out there and just build parallel communities and live free? They're going to come kill you. They're going to drone bomb you. They're going to do this and that. Okay, let them try. First of all, we believe in self-defense. But if I were to die on my land, living a life in line with my values and principles, that's not a bad way to die. I'd rather die that way than instead just continue living by not choosing to live a life in line with my values and principles, instead selling out my ancestors, selling out the coming 7 generations because it's too hard, it's too tough. I just want to keep believing somebody else is going to save me because, Derrick, I don't want to do all that work. I'm tired, I'm busy, I'm exhausted, I'm scared. Guess what? We all are. We fucking understand the situations that we're facing. We understand how big this mountain is that we have to climb, but we're not giving up. We're not giving in. We're committing everything we got, every drop of blood, sweat, and tear that we have to this cause to build the parallel systems that the coming generations are calling on us to create, and that our ancestors are standing strong with us and saying, you have the power to do it. This is why we put you here. This is why the Creator breathed life into you to be here for this moment so you can build the better world. But it's going to take time. It's going to take energy. It's going to take struggle. It's going to take making ourselves responsible for our choices and our actions, because we have the power to manifest that which we know we deserve. We can be humanity at its best. Started going into one of my songs. Sorry about that. My point is, if we're going to lead the way, those of us who have the eyes and the ears to hear and see, and who have the spirit and the strength and the fire in our belly, and know that we are here for a purpose, we need to commit to this more than ever. Because I believe what we are witnessing with this Trump, Teal, DOGE, Musk technocracy, and the fooling of so many people who think they're a part of the freedom movement, and the mainstream alternative media selling people down this dark road, it's going to get worse before it gets better, my friends. And perhaps with it getting worse, more and more people will wake up. But in order for us to be able to do that, we have to start building now, building these parallel systems outside of their mainstream system. So as the masses start to wake up, and as our family and friends finally realize, wait, maybe you weren't crazy, friend, brother, sister, uncle, aunt, mom, dad, can you please talk to me and tell me about all that crazy information I've been ignoring for the years? I'm finally ready to listen. And when that time comes, we need to be ready to be willing to have an open heart, open mind, and open arms and say, come join us as we build a better world. But it takes a certain level of consciousness. It takes being willing to look at yourself in the mirror and to face your own shit, to face your own trauma, especially for us as men. I'm a 40-year-old man, and I'm surrounded and meet so many other men who are older than me who are still refusing to face their inner child, refusing to face their trauma, because it's not manly to talk about your emotions, to talk about your feelings. That's just a bunch of woo-woo, hippie, leftist, progressive bullshit, wokeist, blah, blah, blah. All you're doing is avoiding your own trauma, avoiding your own healing, and you're not serving anybody by doing that. The sooner we're all willing to, yes, confront the physical institutions of power, government and corporations, that's part of it. But face your own internal tyrant, your own doubts, fears, and limiting beliefs and insecurities, and rise above them. Do the difficult work, whether it's through prayer, meditation, journaling, whatever methods that call to you. Do the work. For the good of humanity, focus on yourself. Become an empowered individual. For the good of the collective, focus on yourself. Heal yourself. For the good of your family, for the good of your community, for the good of the world, take care of your own shit. And the more of us who do that, and we come together as healing and empowered human beings, focusing on building new systems that are in line with our values and our principles, then we're going to do the impossible. We're going to do what they keep telling us is impossible. We're going to create that alternative world that we know we desperately need. I really appreciate you guys all tuning in tonight. That's all I got for tonight. I just want to remind you one more time, if you would like to support me and my efforts at theconsciousresistance.com, what's most important right now is to please just go to the Conscious Resistance, please go to the fundraiser page. I'll drop the link one more time. Let's refresh it to see if we've got any new donations while the show's been going on. Nothing new so far, but thank you to everybody else. Again, we're doing this fundraising till April 1st, 13 days left. We're trying to raise $10,000. So far, we raised $4,200 from 75 people, plus another 1,000 in crypto. I'm so grateful to everybody who has chosen to support. Let me go ahead and drop that link one more time. You've got just under 2 weeks to support if you'd like to. If you haven't got paid yet, $5, $10, whatever you've got, it'll go towards us completing the final episode of the Pyramid of Power and continuing to wake up more people. Once we get it out, we're going to be making DVDs, USB drives. It's just going to be beginning. I'm going to be making a companion book, and I'm writing the final script this month. Just this week, I got the answers from Larkin Rose. He's going to be included in the documentary. James Corbett, David Icke, Adam Green, Richard Grove, so many other people. Guys, if you can support, please do support. I really, truly do appreciate. And thank you all for the efforts you do out there to wake up more people. Please share my work wherever you can, share my books, share my interviews. I've got more, I've got an awesome interview coming out this week and more presentations. I've got a tour of a community from Costa Rica that's going to be coming out this week, and I'll be releasing clips from this show throughout the week. So thank you to everybody who has been supporting me. We're going to end tonight with a song from D-Soul Automatic, who's an old school, longtime hip hop artist, truther artist, who just brings that like raw energy. And this one is called Revolution of Self, because that's what we need more than anything right now, my friends. So until next time, remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Peace.
You know, Your Honor, and throughout this entire court case, you haven't looked me or my attorney in the eye once. It's obvious that you're not here in search of justice. So therefore, there's no point in me asking for a lighter sentence. I don't care what you do, because you're not respecting us. This is not a court of law as far as I'm concerned. No justice is being served here. And you still can't look me in the eye. And so I say, do what you want to do. Give me whatever time you want, because I'm not in your hands. I'm in God's hands.
I am a natural person with my God-given rights. I am free to determine how I shall live my life. I am not your property. I do not belong to you. You are not the boss of me. Don't tell me what I ought to do. Don't tell me what's illegal to do to my own self. If I want, I should be able to ruin my own health or take my own life. After all, it's only mine to lose. I'm not condoning it, but we should have the right to choose whatever we want, long as we not doing harm to others. This hypocritical justice system's a lot of rubbish. They make us swear on the Bible until the God above us, the same one who told his son the Savior not to judge us. Yet the law that does this is based on a religion that says the way for man to be like God is by forgiving. But still they build a prison, they quick to give us time. There ain't no justice when the punishment don't fit the crime. Yeah, I am leading the revolution of my spirit, body, and mind. Yeah, inside of me is a solution to any problem I find. I'm gonna love myself and take responsibility for my life, cause God gave me the liberty to live my life the way I think I ought to. Yeah, the definition of capitalize is to take advantage of. So the purpose of capitalism is to capitalize on us. They be capitalizing every single letter in our names. If you think it don't mean nothing, you better think again. Turn a person to a slave, a corporation to a person. They claim it's getting better as the situation worsens. They trying to prevent us, the 99%, from understanding that a natural person's rights are heaven sent. The rules and regulations that they make do not apply to us. They lie to us to try to justify the reasons why we must agree and follow. Even though our leaders' motto's obvious, they all about the dollars, yet they hollering in God we trust, pretending that they religious by reading passages from the Bible, all the while misleading the masses with their brainwashing tactics they using Jesus of Nazareth. Name in vain to claim they fame, these heathens speaking blasphemous. Yeah, I am leading the revolution of my spirit, body, and mind. Yeah, inside of me is a solution to any problem I find. I'm gonna love myself and take responsibility for my life, cause God gave me the liberty to live my life the way I think I ought to. Yeah, I am speaking on behalf of my people with no voice. Ain't no sovereignty or freedom, they leave us with no choice. Yet they claim this liberty, but I say it's quite contrary. Take a look at history, you'll see that they ain't fighting fairly. Ain't no thinking differently, you gotta pay the price to vary. Tell me why the government doesn't give gays the right to marry. They got no right to tell you who you not allowed to love. I reiterate, religion states you're not allowed to judge. Yet these Christian politicians call us all a bunch of thugs. They hit us with a sentence for a small amount of drugs. It's funny how they keep liquor and tobacco legal, yet they take more lives together than ecstasy, crack, and needles. And the weed and shrooms that we consume are not actually lethal, but the government will ban it if they cannot tax the people. To me, the reason for the war on drugs is more than obvious. They profiting by stopping us from exploring our consciousness. Yeah, I am leading the revolution of my spirit, body, and mind. Yeah, inside of me is a solution to any problem I find. I'm gonna love myself and take responsibility for my life, cause God gave me the liberty to live my life the way I think I ought to. Yeah.
Since 2012, the Conscious Resistance Network has been an independent media organization focused on empowering individuals through education, philosophy, health, and community organizing. We work to create a world where corporate and state power do not rule over the lives of free human beings. Our motto is leading by example and helping others in their pursuit of freedom. Visit theconsciousresistance.com to find our articles, documentaries, interviews, podcasts, books, and more. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free.